Well, the worst kept secret in gaming was officially announced today, as at HCS 2025, Halo Studios announced the next campaign experience, Halo Campaign Evolved, releasing in 2026 on the PC, Xbox, and for the first time, PlayStation. My PlayStation playing fans, welcome to the Halo franchise. You guys are in for a treat. Now, what did I think of this reveal and the remake? What information do you need to know that wasn't included in those first few trailers? Because there was a lot. We'll cover all that and more in today's video. Hey guys, this is Justin. Let's jump right into things. This is probably the biggest day for Halo we've had in some time, so we'll take a second to appreciate that before jumping into it. So I made my thoughts on a Halo Combat Evolved remake pretty clear a couple of weeks ago in a dedicated video. In short, Halo CE is nice because it's a game that still holds up extremely well. It's been preserved fairly well online as well in the Master Chief Collection, and of course it already has one, in my opinion, failed remake. To me, that really sets sort of the criteria for what I'm looking for in another attempt at remaking one of the greatest games of all time. Specifically, I want them to keep the soul of Halo alive, the feeling of Halo Combat Evolved, which I think is incredibly unique, while also, if possible, expanding upon the first game, fixing any issues, and just making an interesting experience for both new and old fans. From that standpoint, I do have somewhat mixed feelings. I like the extra content that's being added. They've said 3 new missions are coming to the game, 9 new weapons, some of which were already in Halo CE, just not usable by the player, including the fuel rod cannon and the sword. We also know the needle rifle and battle rifle will be included. Features added to later Halo games like vehicle boarding and presumably weapon swapping. Also in the game, sprint is there. I've fully covered my thoughts on that in the past video. Maybe we'll touch on it again later, but at this point we haven't seen a whole lot of what's actually different, and the promo stuff is all taken from a playthrough of the Silent Cartographer level. During a roundtable discussion, they also allude to the fact that the encounters and the world has been adjusted with still an eye to maintain the feel of the original Halo, which I think is a great approach, especially when you're talking about optional additional content. They allude to the fact that there will be a ton of skulls and modifiers that you can use to make the game more difficult or fun, and Halo Campaign Evolved will also support 4 players, so the arena sizes have to be changed a little bit. The Warthog is also getting an extra seat, which is kind of funny. So all of the new additions I feel fairly positive about. Again, Halo CE is a very well-preserved game, so I'm cool with some experimenting. In fact, I wouldn't mind if they went a bit further. I've said I think the back half of Halo Combat Evolved really could use a pretty significant rework to cut back on some backtracking. It's okay to revisit locations, but certain levels like 2 Betrayals take it a little too far. What I find a lot more frustrating about the remake is the things that were changed for, it just feels like no reason, not an additional bit of content, just changed content. And there's everything here from the models chosen to the art style to, yeah, we will discuss sprint a little bit. Now, while we're definitely dealing with a better situation here than what we had with Halo Combat Evolved Anniversary, I think the remake does lose some of Halo's visual style. Now, I will say, they picked a level where they've got a lot of wiggle room. A lot of the Silent Cartographer is outdoor locations, and there are more heavily stylized missions throughout the game. However, there are several things which I believe lead to a lack of visual cohesion and which negatively impact the game's atmosphere. Now, I will fully admit that I could be biased here because of the impact Halo CE made on me as a young gamer. I was like 10 when I first played it, but to me, the atmosphere of that game has always been nearly as strong as the gameplay, and I think it's why a lot of people so fervently defend the art style, for example. And yeah, they do start to lose me a bit here. I watch the gameplay and I go sort of back and forth from feeling like this is technically impressive to this looks a lot like a stock Unreal Engine game. I think part of the issue, alongside what I'm guessing is technical issues they're still working out with lighting and whatnot, is a lack of real artistic vision. And I'm not saying that to be insulting, but they're throwing in different assets and models. We've got, for example, 343 era grunts here, which just do not match what comes to mind for me when I think of this is Halo CE and this is what Halo CE makes me feel like. There's definitely a bit of a generic feel. Someone said it was like like one of those Nintendo hire this man posts come to life. I think some of the animations and whatnot aren't great. It feels like it lacks a little smoothness, but it's really hard to tell from a trailer. I also, and this hurts me to say, think they still do not have the Forerunner aesthetic right, which is really frustrating to me. Like, look at this fairly iconic scene from Halo 1, the original version, how it's changed now. The Forerunner architecture goes from brutalist and lonely looking to, admittedly, not as bad as it was in Halos 4 and 5, but still just kind of more generic sci-fi stuff. And again, it's important for what the game feels like. Halo feels lonely at times. It feels like you're going through these ancient caverns, deep into this artificial construct which has been forgotten for so long, and I do think the aesthetics play a really important part in maintaining that. So not really how I would have managed the Forerunner art personally. There are just some other questionable changes as well, and these are changes again which I don't really think add to the game, but rather tries to shape Halo more towards what a modern shooter is like. For example, people have noticed that the AR has 32 rounds instead of 60, and the sort of bottomless mag AR is a big part of what makes Halo CE feel like it does. IGN, I believe it was, also reported, for example, that the Magnum doesn't one-shot hunters anymore, and like that's just a weird choice. I'm not sure if health is in the game. Also, it didn't look like it in the main trailer and gameplay they launched, but I've seen other stuff captured later which does appear to show a health bar. This isn't the end of the world for me, but I think it should be in the game. Halo 1 is unique in that, like ODST, where you do feel like you come out of battles beaten and battered, and again, it just adds to the game overall. I know he's saying that a lot, maybe that's frustrating. It's just Halo is an experience that we've been playing for 20 years now. Anyway, regarding sprint, I know that's a really big controversial thing. I don't care as long as they keep the base movement speed relatively the same. I do think it takes away from a lot of what makes the first game special. You're forced to sort of walk slowly through these environments. I mean, it's not that slow, but you're forced to walk through these environments, and I think that's a strength of the game in the end, but it's just not what modern audiences want. You can turn it off as well, or just not click the button. You don't need to turn it off, just don't click the button. Anyway, I've got more thoughts in a minute, but let's also talk some stuff you may not have seen if you just watched the trailers. And I gotta say, they completely botched how this live stream was run. It was supposed to be that you'd watch HCS and the big announcements would come live. Well, they didn't. In fact, the game was fully announced and the first trailers were put on Twitter and YouTube before they were even shown on the live stream, which was like 20 minutes late. So that was really frustrating from a viewer perspective. So I mention that because you may not know that alongside a full playthrough of at least half of the Silent Cartographer and the trailer, there's also a roundtable discussion. We learn a few interesting things there. For one, about how the encounters are being changed and expanded. We also know that the Flood will be getting somewhat of a change, including the importing of pure forms from Halo 3. I don't know whether it's just the tank form, but I assume not. The Warthog is no longer indestructible and also has an extra seat, so 4 players can all travel on it. You're basically sitting on the bumper. Oh, I remember the other weapon that's in Halo CE but not usable, the Sentinel Beam. Anyway, it looks like aim down sight will be in the game. Crossplay is also featured, which is really nice. The 3 new missions will be prequels to the game, involving Sergeant Johnson and Master Chief. I don't think these are based on any existing lore. Like, they're not from, as far as I know, the Fall of Reach or anything, the book. Kind of a cool idea. Like, I'm for this. I also think it would have been really cool to expand on some of the stuff that's present in the novel, which I think was good by Eric Nyland. But either way, it's all good. Anyway, my overall thoughts. I think it looks fine. I think it looks good even. The Forerunner stuff really bothers me. I'm going to be tweeting about it a lot. I'm going to get unfollowed. It's okay. I think what is more frustrating is that, for one, this seems to be the big announcement, another remake of Halo 1. Not much else, it looks like. And 2, we're waiting until next year. Like, it's hard for me to really get excited for this. I feel whelmed. You know, I feel whelmed. I want it to be good. I'm excited to play the game. I can't wait to jump into Halo Combat Evolved for the first time with 4 players in co-op, by the way. I forgot to mention that. Online co-op. But it's also not inspiring anything really in me. And maybe that's part of being older, I guess. I'm never going to be 10 playing Halo for the first time again. I don't know. Those are my thoughts. I don't want to be negative. I don't think they're doing a bad job, but I don't know. Let me know your thoughts. Like I said, bye-bye.